Before I start, I wanted to wish all the mothers out there a very happy Mother's Day. It's been a really tough year and a bit, and I think for parents, grandparents, and everyone supporting, it's been a really, really trying time. The fact that our children are still alive, the fact that the balls are still juggling, is something to be celebrated. I pray that you and your family and friends are blessed in your communities together today. So here we are, the woman at the well and Jesus. It's really interesting to look at the backstory before we peer behind the curtain onto this scene. In verse 4, we read that Jesus had to go through Samaria. But actually, if you look at these three regions, which are stacked up on top of each other, Jesus was traveling from Judea in the south up to Galilee in the north. To all of us, it would seem natural that he would cross through, but what we don't know, or what some of us don't know, is that pious Jews would often take an extra long journey out to the east just to avoid traveling through Samaria. A Jew so much as crossing the shadow of a Samaritan would deem him unclean. These two races had 500 years under their belts of mistrust and hatred for one another. So the fact that Jesus decided to go through Samaria is suggested by scholars as something as extremely purposeful and not something he had to do. So from this reading, we observe the longest encounter that Jesus has with someone from the Gospel of John. Remarkably, this encounter is not only with a Samaritan, but a woman, and a woman of questionable character. The Samaritan woman reminds me of a TV personality, Trevor Noah. You may or may not know him. Trevor was born in South Africa, not in a very glamorous surrounding. He's now the host of The Daily Show in the States and talks all things politics, comedy, and everything in between. But Trevor's life started out a little differently. In his book, Born a Crime, he talks of how his grandmother would hide him from the law as a child. You see, Trevor was born with a Swiss-German white father and a black Xhosa mother. His birth was illegal and against the law at the time in South Africa. I don't think the story was much different for our Samaritan woman. She was born a Samaritan. She was born a woman, a second-class citizen regardless of race. Not only that, Samaritan women were deemed unclean, impure from birth. She had the odds stacked up against her, born a crime, and probably the reason for many of her life choices. So here we are. Jesus is resting at the well of Jacob. His disciples have gone into town to buy some food. Along comes this woman, in the heat of a day, alone. These two things suggest that she was not welcome to draw water with the women who were accustomed to drawing water in the early, cooler hours of the day. She was an outcast in an outcast society. I suspect she wanted to come unnoticed, draw her water, and leave. No scene, no drama. But Jesus changes everything in only the way that Jesus does. He turns to the woman and asks her for a drink of water. I can't imagine what she must have been thinking at this time. Who is this man? He is a Jew. Why is he asking me for a drink of water? Does he not know who I am? Does he not know my past? Her shame possibly magnified from within. Yet whatever she was thinking, she certainly doesn't shy away. She asks some pretty poignant questions. Why are you asking me for a drink of water? Where and how are you going to get this living water that you speak of? Are you greater than Jacob, who built this well for us? the leader of our faith? And Jesus responds just as boldly, peeling back the layers, revealing both himself to her and the truth he knows about her unsavory past. He doesn't waste any time, does he? And with each question, the penny seems to be dropping for the Samaritan woman. They go deeper and deeper with each and every question. And Jesus finally says to her, "Go and get your husband," knowing what her answer will be. Why does he do this? It seems so cruel. But what Jesus does is he lets her know that he fully knows her. He fully knows her past. He fully knows her sin. And that's why he is here. Perhaps if he revealed himself to her, her immediate reaction would have been shame and guilt and unworthiness. Now she knows that Jesus knows everything and that he is here to redeem her. She goes on to almost change the subject, talking about worship and how the Jews limited to Jerusalem and the Samaritans to Mount Gerizim. Why worship? Another place she would be considered an outcast. But Jesus once again answers her redemptively. You can worship in spirit and in truth. Why in truth? Because in truth is the way that this Samaritan woman can feel that full redemption, knowing that she is fully known and can worship God from that place. Grace and mercy is laced throughout their conversation. Jesus rarely revealed himself as the Messiah, and yet here, with this unnamed woman, he reveals his truth because he believes she is worthy of it. What wasn't in our reading today was the disciples' return from town to discover Jesus talking to this woman. Jesus talking to a Samaritan woman. They were completely shocked. She rushes off to her village and tells them all about what has happened. And if you read on, you see how her entire village comes to Christ, all through this unnamed, socially outcast woman. It's amazing how long it took for so many of the disciples to believe who Jesus was. Many miracles, many journeys. And here this woman is transformed through one conversation. It says so much about the human heart and character. There are so many gems we can take away from today's reading. We are reminded that personal testimony can change lives. The beauty of testimony is that it's yours. There are so many truths and stories to be discovered in our faith. But the thing that truly pierces a soul is the truth of someone's personal testimony. And we should never underestimate the power in that. We are reminded that the love, mercy, and forgiveness that Jesus offers is for each and every one of us. There is no prejudice and no exception. It is no accident that this meeting of Jesus was with a Samaritan, a woman, and someone of questionable character. And what Jesus does here is incredible. Is not only does he redeem her and reconcile him to himself, but he reconciles her to his community. We see how he crosses racial, faith, moral, gender, almost every boundary there is to cross for this woman by bringing himself to her. And she goes on to tell her village about him, and they invite Jesus to stay on. Can you imagine the reconciliation that occurred during that time? We are reminded that Jesus is the only one who can satisfy our deepest longings. He is the only one who can save us. He is the living water, the spring that never dries up, an everlasting salvation within, one that does not disappear with loss or sorrow, joy, or death. This is the eternal spring that He has given to us from which we can draw. We don't have to wait for eternity to encounter Jesus. Just as He was present and inaccessible for the woman at the well, so is He for us today. He knows every bit of us, even those parts that we hide from others and we don't want others to know. He knows that part of us, and He wants to heal us. He wants to redeem us. We can be with Him in spirit and in truth, just like trees planted by the water, bearing fruit season after season. This is what Jesus' freedom brings.